Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Showcase series presented by IoT for All, the #1 publication and resource for the Internet of Things. I'm your host, Ryan Chacon. We would truly appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you have not already done so. All right, on today's episode, we have Justin Silva, the CEO of Momentum IoT. They are a company that helps small and mid-sized fleet managers locate and manage their trucks, trailers, heavy and light equipment. With their 4th-gen GPS and telematics tracking solutions. Very cool company, a lot of very interesting products that they have. Today, our focus is to showcase the Toolie. It is a game-changing Fitbit for tools is kind of how they describe it. The idea is to enable remote managers to visualize job sites, figure out job process, ensure that each step is being completed, and resolve issues which are halting work as they are happening. Very interesting product, very cool application, something that I really enjoyed kind of learning about the whole story behind it, how it came to market, the process of building it, launching of it, success it's seeing in the market, things like that. So for those of you out there who may find value in this for your business, the business of your customers, I think you'll get a lot of value out of learning more about it here. So I hope you enjoyed this episode with Justin Silva, the CEO of Momentum IoT. Welcome, Justin. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Ryan.
Absolutely. Let's start us off by having you give a quick introduction about yourself to our audience, and then also give us an overview of the company.
Yeah, sure. So I've really always existed at the intersection of construction, field service, blue collar, and technology. And I started Momentum as a manifestation of that in 2017. We spent a few years in R&D, went to market in 2019, really focused on this opportunity that we found on in SMB fleets, who are actually the largest portion of the market for asset tracking. And most of them still aren't adopting the technology. So we really crafted a go-to-market hyper-focused on unlocking that segment. Launched about 3 years ago and have had good luck so far. And now we're building onto our success.
Fantastic. So today, for this showcase series, we're going to be focusing on the Toolie product and solution that you all have. Let's start off just giving a quick overview of what it is and its intended kind of purpose.
Sure. So the Toolie is a tool and light equipment tracking solution. It's designed to be used to literally get stuck onto or attached to some larger tools all the way up until like light equipment. Basically, the ceiling for the Toolie is anything that doesn't have a power generation system. So take a motor vehicle or a piece of yellow iron. If it's got an alternator and a battery, we're talking about things lower than that in terms of value and size. So we've seen it attached to everything from ladders to weed whackers and lawn mowers, but all the way up to really big, heavy equipment as well. Just anything that doesn't have power generation.
So tell us about the technology that's involved and how this kind of compares to other solutions on the market that would solve a similar problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So the technology inside the Toolie isn't particularly novel. Really, the sophistication lies in the cloud and in the algorithms that process the information and in the embedded firmware that's on the Toolie itself. But the hardware stack is essentially you have a Bluetooth radio, you have an accelerometer, and a battery. It's really simple, which I think is a big value prop for customers because that means it's cheap, right? There's some other people that are trying to solve, and we see some thrashing around in the industry of folks trying to solve the use cases of, hey, where's my light equipment and tools, in real time. Unfortunately, they all right now, for the most part, are dependent on having a phone, like a smartphone with an app open, and they're using the Bluetooth in that phone to track and backhaul the data off of the sensors, which is like works fine in the lab. But once you get onto a job site, like having a requirement of somebody to have an app open and in the foreground, like walking around scanning is just not realistic, especially in the construction space. So when Apple and Android removed the ability to do background sniffing on Bluetooth, that really kind of made the barrier to get value of these existing solutions really, really tough. So what we did is, having the Eagle One platform already installed in thousands of customers' vehicles across the country, we just sort of over the air turned on and used the Bluetooth of the telematics device that we already have. That pretty much removes the need to use a smartphone to backhaul the information, because we can constantly be doing it in the background.
Fantastic. So I guess one question I have, just 'cause I'm always curious about this, is how did the product come to exist? Like, what was the story behind the creation? What was the opportunity you saw, or the gap in the market?
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, when we first started, we were really focused on these SMBs. These folks are like the backbone of America, and we're really proud to serve that segment of customer. We like to say that we're kind of democratizing telematics for that SMB, who remains even today largely unconnected. We scaled up pretty quickly here at over 3,500 active customers now. That's a big signal that we can tap into to learn where more problems are to solve. And that's pretty much what we did. And what we found is customers were really happy with our solution in tracking things that are, let's say, $20,000 and above. So, your generators and motor vehicles and above. But really, there was no visibility into equipment that was below $20,000. That's kind of what we started with on the Toolie. But then something unexpected happened. As we were developing the Toolie and putting it out into the field and showing people on, pins on a map where their stuff was, we kind of realized and had this aha moment that we can use the accelerometer with some pretty sophisticated algorithms in the back end and actually start deriving utilization information off of the equipment as well.
Sure.
And once we said that out loud, that changed the game for us. We started talking to customers. Hey, what would happen if you could see, you kind of be at any job site at any time, bird's eye view, see all of your equipment, what equipment's running, what equipment's not running, pipe all that data into our preventative maintenance platform, and really kind of be able to see which employees on the job site are most productive, least productive. And that's really when we started getting really excited about the Toolie. And that's kind of when I just went all in on it. So far, we're having a good time.
Yeah, you could also tell, if there's a certain amount of product or, assets on a site that may not be used, and figure out, from an efficiency standpoint, maybe you can move some from one site to another because you have too many of this one tool here. And, where are things and how can you easily access them, which I'm sure is similar in in hospital settings and things like that as well.
Yeah.
Which totally makes sense.
It's a huge use case. A lot of customers of ours are in the construction space, and a lot of them rent equipment for job sites. And, some, especially that light equipment, that again doesn't have its own power generation source. There's a lot of waste out there, especially when you have a lot of equipment that's on rent. And then one last piece that we're kind of is being surfaced right now, that's recent in mind, is being able to feed all of that preventative maintenance data into our maintenance platform. There's really good systems that we have now to keep track of preventative maintenance for vehicles, but you do a lot of wasted maintenance on light equipment that maybe wasn't utilized that much. So our reporting features that we have in the platform really just directly answer those questions.
Fantastic. So now, if I'm watching this and I have a pretty decent idea from your this last few minutes of the conversation on how this works, what it is, take us through use cases that you are comfortable sharing for kind of the main target audience of this, and kind of how the process goes from adoption to utilizing it.
Sure. So most customers find us online. We offer free trials for qualified customers. We ship them some hardware. They install the Eagle One in their vehicles or in their tool cribs. And they slap some Toolies onto their equipment. And they're basically now collecting data. It's essentially like adding an hours meter to all of your equipment as well. So most common use cases are, and we like to talk about it this way all the time, it's where's my stuff and what is it doing, right? So where is all my equipment deployed? It sounds like a simple question, but there's actually a really cumbersome process of tracking that right now. Prior to the Toolie, most customers have a clipboard with a table printed out,
Sure.
attached to a tool crib, and they got scribble marks of I'm this guy and I checked out this equipment on this date, and then I checked it back in maybe. And it's just a really cumbersome process. They're spending a lot of time doing manual inventory counts. Almost all the people we're talking to have somebody whose job it is once a month to go around and take inventory of all of their equipment. And then, of course, the Toolie just eliminates all of that right away. Because now you know where all of your stuff is, so you don't need to keep track of who's checking it in and out. Right. You know what vehicle it's attached to or what job site it's on. The Toolie will automatically triangulate itself with whatever Eagle One is closest to it. Okay. And then it will load balance across multiple Eagle Ones if it's in a congested network. So that's like the kind of where is my stuff, and then the what is it doing. It depends on the kind of the vertical, but one vertical that's interesting to us is landscaping. There you have 90 to 95% of the time spent on a job, there should be some sort of equipment running, right? Okay. There's not a lot of time like walking around talking to customers. They're really just, they show up, they run the equipment, and they come back. Right. And you can actually now with the Toolie visualize that productivity very quantifiably and essentially identify who on your team is maybe like outperforming others. Yep. And I think that that's offering all sorts of extra value beyond just the basic location tracking.
Absolutely. So where do you, if you can share any of these details, where do you kind of see this going? What's the evolution of either this product or this type of product in the market based on, your engagement with customers, your active deployments, what do you kind of see this evolving into?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, one of the nice things about solving and building the Toolie has been there's been a lot less risk of if you build it, they will come. And I think in IoT projects, you see that a lot, right? We got signal really early on that a lot of companies are trying to solve this, right? So we just kind of took it the next step by making it work with our telematics platform so that you don't have to do anything different, and then through the activity. So I think that we have certainly a head start on some folks in the industry, but I think this will absolutely be a mainstay, just like telematics is. Right. Nobody would dare like run a fleet right now without GPS tracking. Right. And I think that the Toolie will just naturally evolve into that as well. The cost of the solution is just so efficient that there's really no reason not to.
Are you able to share any details on the cost, kind of how that is? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So the core Eagle One product that we have that does your telematics and your GPS tracking is $15 a month per asset. And the Toolie, depending on the quantity, for small shops with less than 15 tools and equipment, it's $8 a month. And then bigger shops move into the $6 a month category per piece of tracked equipment. So it's almost half the cost of a full-fledged GPS tracker. Yeah.
Very cool. So who from our listeners out there, you talked about obviously the equipment tracking side, which relates to the construction space and so forth. Are there any particular industries aside from construction that should be really paying attention to a device like this? And is there any type of usual job title type person within an organization that usually are the ones you are selling into, just so that they can kind of get a sense of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of the value is to operations people and operations execs. We're starting to focus more on the demo of field supervisors because if you consider like what their job is on a day-to-day, a big portion of their job is driving around from job site to job site, making sure that tools are being used and that job sites are running smoothly and that there's productivity happening. So we think that we can actually add quite a bit of value to supplement a lot of those kind of repetitive tasks that a field supervisor does. Instead of being stuck in traffic, driving from job site to job site, you can now pull up that bird's eye view and see not only, like I said, where the stuff is and what it's doing, but based on the type of job, like take landscaping again, you can see, okay, my mowers on this job site are running right now. So that tells me I just started that job. if I need to dispatch that guy, it's probably going to be a while. But now let's say that the mowers are idle, but their backpack blowers are running. Well, usually that happens at the end of the job. So you use this data to really infer job progress as well. So landscaping, construction, it's very much like a horizontal. It's very much like a horizontal offering, and we have a lot of these in the field now with just our existing customers, and where people are telling us about new use cases almost every day.
That's awesome. So for our audience who wants to learn more about the Toolie, follow-up questions, check out that free trial that you mentioned. What's the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. MomentumIoT.com/Toolie. That's Toolie. You can Google the same and probably get there. That's the best way.
Awesome. Well, Justin, thank you so much for taking the time. Very cool product. I think the solution is very relevant. It's an area that I don't think is, from my experience, as touched as others. With the larger, more expensive assets, obviously makes sense on why they're tracking them, but hasn't really been too many solutions focused on the smaller stuff. I mean, obviously the consumer space with Apple AirTag and stuff, but I know this is different. This isn't really necessarily something that or that is not something that would fit in a lot of these environments at the scale that's needed. So fantastic stuff you guys are going on. And I really appreciate you taking the time and look forward to getting this out to our audience.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the IoT Solution video series from us at IoT for All. If you did, we'd really appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. If you have a potential solution or something in the space that you would love to showcase to our audience, please email me directly at ryan@iotforall.com. I'd be happy to discuss what it is that you have going on and find ways to get that out to our audience. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.